Hi, my name is Sam Ross, and we are at Attaboy on Manhattan's Lower East Side, and we are sampling some penicillins and paper planes today. So I created the penicillin around 2005. I was working between Milk and Honey and Little Branch on the west side, and we had just been introduced to a brand of Scotch whiskey called Compass Box, and he dropped a big shipment off for us and asked us to play around with it, and I loved it immediately, and I thought I wanted to do a little whiskey sour riff. We had a famous drink that was created at Milk and Honey called the Gold Rush that I wanted to use as a template. I wanted to do a little variation on that. So the Gold Rush is bourbon, lemon, and honey. I did the blended scotch, which is the Islay from Compass Box initially. We used the fresh lemon, little fresh ginger juice, and honey. I split the sweetener between those two agents there, and then shook it. It was great. It needed something else, and I reached for this beautiful bottle of Compass Box Peat Monster, super smoky and caramelly and rich, and I just dropped a little bit of that smoky Compass Box Peat Monster on top of that cube, and it sung. You know, it honestly, it didn't actually, I didn't think too much of it at the time, and it wasn't until maybe 7 or 8 months later, I was working Pointwell, and one of our servers was coming up, and she had a round of bartender's choice drinks that she had to choose, and she was sort of talking out loud. I was making drinks, and I was overhearing her, and she was sort of saying, the first thing she said was, well, I have to put a penicillin on the table because every table needs to experience this drink. And that was when I was like, huh, do you think so? Wow, I didn't think that much of it until now. And from there, it just became its own entity. The name penicillin was a funny one. I kind of felt like the components of the penicillin, fresh lemon, ginger, honey, the smoky scotch, they were all good for things that, you know, that cures what ails you. Part of it was sort of coming back to the idea of, you know, when you're sick in Jewish culture, you have the chicken noodle soup, or they call that Jewish penicillin. It's just something that makes you feel better immediately. And that's what I kind of felt like with the penicillin. It was super fun working with Tip Top on these drinks. We took them from, you know, version 1 through to version, I can't remember what we ended up at. And I was just saying earlier, you know, drinking these drinks, they don't taste like a replication of these cocktails. They actually taste like the real thing. And, you know, I'm saying that as someone who created these drinks. I feel very strongly that you'll enjoy them too. They're absolutely delicious. So the paper plane was a drink I invented right here on Eldridge Street as well. It was back when it was Milk and Honey, and I was working with a bartender named Toby Maloney. And we talk about the third wave of, like, the third cocktail wave that was just starting back in, this is, you know, 2007. I got to New York City in 2004, and we were just seeing the early part of this third wave that we're still in. And I was a young bartender at the time. Toby was a senior bartender at the time, and he asked me, he was consulting on consulting and owning a brand new craft cocktail bar in Chicago called the Violet Hour. So he asked me personally to come up with a new drink for the summer menu at the Violet Hour, the first summer menu. I was very honored. You know, I was a young bartender. I thought that was amazing that my drink was going to be featured at this bar in Chicago. So I got to work creating the paper plane. And for me, I had a template. You know, the Last Word cocktail had just sort of been relaunched by Murray Stenson in Seattle, and it was getting a lot of play at the cocktail bars. It was this unusual equal parts citrus liqueur cocktail that on paper didn't look like it would work, but you put it into a drink and it sings. So my idea was that I wanted to do an equal parts citrus cocktail, and I really wanted to use a product called Amaro Nonino. So it's an Amaro from Udinese, the northeast of Italy, and I'd only just been introduced to it by a friend, and I absolutely adored it, and I wanted more people to know about Amaro Nonino. So I got to work on this drink. It was, you know, I'd do it late nights after the crowd had sort of died down at Milk and Honey, and we tried so many variations of this drink. Always with the Nonino. Originally, we did it with Campari. We later worked out it was better with Aperol. The Campari was just making it a little bit too bitter. That bourbon component, we tried absolutely every other spirit under the sun in that little roll. So we tried, from gins, tequilas, mezcals, Scotch whiskies, brandies, everything, rums, you name it. And bourbon was still the best for that component. And when I'd finally nailed it, at least I thought I had nailed it, I remember it was about 3 in the morning and I run out into the hallway of Milk and Honey and I call up Toby. He's asleep because it's very late. And I left him a voicemail and I said, I think I've nailed it. Here's the drink. I'm super happy with it. I called it the Paper Plane because it was at the time MIA's song Paper Planes was on repeat on my iPod. It was an iPod. And it just was fitting that I called the drink the Paper Plane.